And as we are having Christmas now, I give a Christmas lecture, of course. And this will be about not the Christmas fairy tale, although the Christmas fairy tale plays a role. Now, you can buy the Christmas fairy tale in the bookshops or via any electronic bookshop or virtual market. Unfortunately, it's written in German. Well, I don't know, unfortunately. But this is the famous author of this book a couple of years ago. And of course, if you look like this, you have to write a Christmas fairy tale. What this Christmas fairy tale was about, and these are the illustrations not made by me but by somebody else. What was it about? It was, in a way, something about what we are talking, what you have been talking, looking at in your essays, meaning change. We have societies, they are changing, and whatever you do in research is in one way or another concerned with change. Change of reality, change of society, change of our perspective as we take it on the reality, and change in terms of we want to use our analysis to change something, and we have to deal with one fundamental contradiction, if you want. We start with what we know, we start with what we know from history, and we start with what we know or what we analyze from today. And at the same time, we look at the changes, not just in terms of what changes, but where do we want to go with it. There are some issues we always know, at least we think we know them. And at the same time, there are some issues where we have actually difficult to really, and I mean really, understand what we mean. So this little story started with some words like, once upon a time, this story started, the Christmas fairy tale. And once upon a time means it's such a long time ago that only children can actually understand what it means. In those days, an old man was traveling around the world in a sleigh, in a beautiful sleigh with 8 horses in front of it. And within very, very short time, in December, every year in December, he was distributing presents to all the children of this world. Not to all children, some misbehaved a little bit and they didn't get anything. Can you imagine this? Can you imagine what a long, long time ago means? And can you imagine what it means to have to do something in such a short period of time? In a way, probably you cannot. Children can do it, because they don't have this, in a way, not this analytical way of thinking, that they put everything into numbers. A long time ago. We cannot imagine how long it is. Children can imagine that it doesn't play a role. That you don't have to put a number on it, but that it's simply something we have to deal with. Change is something where we think in very concrete terms, usually. We have a point in time, or we have something in our societies, and we compare it to something in another point of time or in another country. Putting labels onto it and thinking about it in very concrete terms. Now, I don't want to read the entire story because I'm simply too lazy to translate it, but at least it shows something about which I wrote in another 3 books actually, which had been children's books. And the main actor in these children's books had been Fantasia. Fantasia is the name of a star, and part of this name refers to fantasy, to imagination, and the other part refers to reality. Fantasia. And this is what you actually do, or have to do, should do, when it comes to research, to academic work. Academic work, in different ways, is a creative process. It's not a mechanical process of putting different things together, looking, measuring, and then saying, okay, you can put it into figures, you can put it into tables or something. You can put it into laws and analyze these laws. But it is as well about something more, that we say it's creative in terms of we take different perspectives on it. We can change our position and get a completely new insight into things. We can say we are studying, this was the topic of most of the essays here in this group, we are studying in China, and we compare this with another country. How is studying in another country? What is it about? If you do so, you have, and you have to have, you should have, a certain point on which you stand. And you say, I look at it from the perspective of the quality for me as a student. What do I get out of it? Now, what do I get out of it can be already different things. It can be in terms of qualification, in terms of different ways of learning, in terms of what kind of job perspective do I have afterwards, here in China, coming back, or in another country, studying there and staying there. Different perspectives. And taking different perspectives is already a creative process. Which means, not least, that you always start with 2 different moments in mind. The one is interest. You always have some interest why you are studying it. And this interest is not necessarily this one interest alone, but of course, why not? Your interest in writing such an essay is you have to, if you want to pass the exam. Very simple thing. But at the same time, there are different options, and you can choose from different topics. There is another dimension to interest. You have been choosing one and not the other. And this is something where actually we said, we won't help you. You have to decide. You have to take this topic that interests you. This is the one perspective, the one dimension of research. The other is that you have a certain understanding of the reality, and this understanding is usually what I quoted in the lecture, is usually about what Karl Marx said in the introduction preface to the political economy. We do not start from the general, we do not start from the population when we do research. The population as such is very diffuse. We don't really know what it is. But we develop our own perspective on this. And this own perspective is not just a subjective perspective, but it is the perspective of, on the one hand, what we know already. We know a language. Very important. It's not just the words, it's a certain understanding with which we approach reality. We have our own history, meaning you are, I don't know how old you are, between 20, 25, I guess, roughly. Which means you grew up, I guess all of you, except one, in China, about 20 years ago. 20, 25 years ago. Your parents grew up in a completely different country in a way, because it was China 40, 50 years ago. This makes a huge difference. And this makes a huge difference even if you use the same words, if you use the same terms. These are differences in way of understanding. I traveled a little bit. I didn't write only children's books and Christmas stories, but I wrote two, if you want, biographical books. The one is in German, the other is in English. And trying myself to get, with my education, with my job, a perspective on what does it actually mean to work in Budapest. This was actually where it started. One book. What does it mean to work in Moldova? Chisinau, Dnepropetrovsk. What does it mean to live in these places? Not just go there for holidays, but to live there, to engage with the reality. And I always try to be aware, to stay aware of, or remain aware of the fact that I am coming from a specific background, meaning my experience. So we have, with the interest, the obligation, if you want, to move from the general to the concrete. Roughly. There are more steps involved, there are different dimensions involved, abstraction, other stuff. We just take this. We are not interested in this diffuse, oh great, it's here. We have culture, we have different products, we can buy something that we cannot buy in our country. But we are interested in specific items, and we try to approach them by looking at what you may call problem, what you may call challenge, what you may simply call being of interest. Being of interest, remember I used this term interest and said it is about interesse, about being in between, living with it. We are not simply observer and there is a reality out there. This is not interesting. It is interesting in terms of tourism or whatsoever, just enjoying things. But what we are talking about as researchers, as academics, we are talking, what does it mean really to live in a different situation? To make sense out of it. In our case, to make sense out of it as students when it comes to the topic of the essays, or as economists. I frequently said an economist has a different perspective than lawyers. It doesn't mean that the one is wrong and the other is right. It is about what is of interest for us. So what is linked to this is, on the one hand, to look at something that is obvious problems that are just popping up. We just go somewhere and we see immediately there's a problem, there's a challenge. Studying abroad, you need a visa. Working abroad, you need a visa. Studying in Europe, for you need one visa, and you can travel within Europe. You do not need for every country a new visa. Kind of obvious issues. So we look at the open problems that are in front of it, but at the same time we are looking at something else, and we may call it finding problems, defining problems. What is it really about? You can say, okay, I need a visa and that's it. But what is involved? I don't know. I don't say that visas are wrong, but at least we can ask. We talk about globalization. We talk about open borders. We are talking about traveling here and there, and everything is freely moving around the globe. And then we have borders. We need visa. For me, it's pretty annoying currently to see how Europe treats migrants trying to come into Europe. Europe, supposedly the free space, opening borders and talking about freedom of migration, freedom of people. And then they have fences, they have border controls, not allowing anybody into the country. Ships are sinking, ships with migrants trying to get into Europe. Try to think about it, not simply in terms of certain terms that we have, globalization, free movement around the world, one issue. Try to think as well, what does it in actual fact mean if we have these contradictions? On the one hand, free movement, on the other hand, strict fences, barbed wires, weapons. What does it mean for today, and what does it mean possibly for the future? It's a challenge to think about it. The consequences for the future mean as well, looking at the problems, if you say we are looking at what it means to study abroad, what does it mean, not simply in terms of benefits and advantages, disadvantages, but what does it mean as well for the perspectives of a different way of living together in the future, globally? So what we do with this interest, general, concrete, looking at different perspectives of problems, of challenges, of issues, we enter a process, and now we start really with a research in the narrower sense. We put things into a certain order. Coming from here, we are not interested in this diffuse picture, but we are looking at the order of things by using certain classifications. By using certain terms as concepts, thinking about what does education actually mean. Is it simply the transfer of knowledge? Is it about the development of personalities? Or both together? What does it mean actually to transfer knowledge? And to be honest, I have difficulties to define it. I can give you a definition. At the same time, I see that the understanding of knowledge changed fundamentally over the last 50 years. It probably changed as well over a longer period, but I started to think about these things 50 years ago. So if I would have started earlier, I would probably have said it changed earlier. Before I only suffered from this education. Anyway, we start looking at ordering, looking at classifications, and with all this, we try to find meaning, to make sense out of it. And this means we come back to the question of interest. What is the interest? It can be simply the economic interest. It can be the interest of living together in a new way. It can be the interest of simply general education. There are different ways. And there you find a second dimension to interest. On the one hand, it is a personal interest. You are interested in getting a better job. You are interested in getting a better job in terms of income. You are interested in just seeing different interesting things. You are interested to have a comfortable job, not working too much, getting a reasonably good income. Why do I need very much income, high income? And not facing the need of traveling around. Different interests, different personal interests. Then there is an economic interest, and I'm not talking now about your economic interest, but I'm talking about the economic interest of the society we live in, or the system, if you want. There had been this issue coming up in essays. I don't remember exactly the terminology of doing something for the country, bringing something back to the country, serving the country. And this is always, as well, about serving the country in terms of a common interest of this country. You have to specify it further, but this is a different dimension of interest. And then, of course, you have different groups in society with different interests. You cannot say simply this is the interest of the country, but you have to say who, what in the country is actually gaining from it. Then you have, again, another interest, that's professionals, educators. They have a different interest again. Maybe that a university simply wants to earn money from students, or the university wants to invest into the future of the country in terms of actually spending money. Again, different things, different interests. Sometimes you have actually a kind of very small area in terms of interest, namely the interest of a profession. We need in our profession specific education from another country. It's interesting when it comes to law, for instance, or in some other professions where it's really of a special interest. Now, this is the one thing when it comes to ordering, to classification, to making sense, that we are trying to figure out, and this is the point here, to figure out exactly in which interest are we doing our research. Be conscious, be clear about it. And this was in the essays, looking at the essays, topic that frequently came up in terms of you put different things together. The professional interest of educators having a safe job or not having a safe job. The interest of students getting a good education, whatever good education means. Having a nice student life. Different things. And then, of course, professional interests. Be clear about what you are talking about and make it clear to yourself. After doing this, and only after doing this, you can say, now you start to come to this level of understanding. You know what you are actually talking about. You know about the conditions and the relations between things. Any academic work is very much concerned with relations. We do not want simply to measure the weight of something, the height of something, the height of profit, the height of wages, the number of unemployment. Why should we? We count it, we say it's too high, it's okay. We have more interest in it, and we want to know, why is this the case? Why is unemployment rising? Why is it going down? Why is the country getting richer, or why does it not get richer? These are interests where we are looking at understanding of the reality, not simply describing some isolated things. What I say now is a little bit simplified, but it is helpful when it comes to the research to say these relationships are in one way or another concerned with the question of cause and effect. We are looking at the cause of something. Why is it happening that something occurs in reality? And the why question is, what is the cause of it? The first and most simple example is the mechanical relationship. I'll try it if it still works. In the morning it worked. If I open the finger, what happens? The fingers, what happens? Falls down. So the cause is I open the fingers, I relieve holding it, and it falls down. Correct? Not correct. Because the cause is that we have a law, so-called law of gravity. If we would not have this, the shot would actually stay there. So there is the gravity that actually pulls it down. Which does not mean that it's really wrong to say it falls because I release it. but we have to think in a more complex way. Now we can modify these causes, we can work with it. There is a mechanic in things, but at the same time there is a change by influencing things. If you look at a river, there's water flowing through it. It's a mechanical process. And actually it is a mechanical process that you will find a change here. Something is taken away here because of the water pressure. Now I can immediately say if I want to speed up the flow or if I want to make it a channel that is more useful for ships, I just straighten it. Goes there anyway, just cut this off. So I can influence it, meaning I contradict, this is the second perspective on cause and effect, I contradict the first initial appearance of what is there. A straight flow. There's a little bit of problem of this because we have history as well. I can say, great, we have a straight line, it's very good for shipping. Ships can go the short way, they can go the fast way, no problem in the way. History says it may be good for a short period of time. It may be good for this limited interest, but it is not necessarily good if we talk about the long-term perspective, because the water is so fast, it doesn't find any resistance anymore, that if you do it, you most likely have occasionally flooding. This is an example. There are many details to it to discuss it, but it shows, at least, it should show at least, never think in a straightforward line that you say, okay, cause and effect, a mechanical relationship. Always think, how did we get there, and what does it mean when we try, if we try to influence the relationship. Contradictions, history, historical developments going very close hand in hand. This is a general, more or less general perspective on this. As I say, we come and try to narrow things down step by step by step. Don't jump into this general diversity. That's where you start, in some way. But the immediate next step is, according to the interests, narrow it down, not in terms of getting less, but to specify what you are talking about. This means as well, if you come to comparison, actually, that you cannot compare different things. You can compare different countries, as some of you did. And of course, this is what you want to do, otherwise you wouldn't do this. But if you compare, always do it by looking at the same issues. Don't look at the culture of Saudi Arabia and the money that it costs to go to university in the United States of Northern America and staying at home with your parents and bothering them. Somebody wrote, which is important, I think. You are not actually disturbing the family anymore. Your mother can do whatever she wants, and you are going to another country. A new perspective on freedom. He left, I don't know, with 20, I think, his house, his home, his whatsoever, in a peaceful way. Others left earlier in a not so peaceful way. But perspective of freedom. It is important, but make sure that you name it, that you look at the same thing in different countries or in different perspectives, in different phases of your life. At what you can do with it in your future. What others can do with it in their future. What it means in terms of the substance, in terms of the content, in terms of the way of studying. All different ways. I usually don't like these things, but there is something that is more or less easy and helpful. More or less means never apply this in a mechanical way and say, oh yes, I have something here and I just apply it. Two dimensions to this. The one is you have always different theories. You may say it is about the thinking, the generalization others did already on this topic. There are theories about education. There are theories about migration. There are theories about culture, different aspects of culture, hegemony, many, many different things. Look at it. They are not immediately dealing with your topic. But they may be interesting that you can make use out of them. They are not of immediate interest, I say as well, because you may take something out of it as inspiration, as stimulation for your own work on the topic. That's the one thing. The other thing is more a kind of tool, and you find many of them. I just take one out, which is very common, broadly known, and makes some sense, especially when it comes to economics or to some things like studying abroad or not. That is what is called SWOT analysis. SWOT stands for strengths and weakness. And it is helpful in the way of giving you an order. With all the categories, with all this ordering you did, you look at, and with the aim, with the interest you have, you look at the strength of something. And you look at the weakness of something. You can use other terms, SWOT, somebody thought it sounds nice. You can say as well advantages and disadvantages. Let's see how we get on with the AD. The other thing of the SWOT is opportunities. And threats. We talked in economics as well about externalization. Opportunities are usually something that comes from outside. Something is given, something is offered to you. You can go now and study in another country. You have the opportunity, at least there are the resources more and more available. And then you have the internal things, meaning you have to be strong enough, you have to get the resources of yourself, out of yourself, to do it. Strengths opportunities is of course something that is helpful, that promotes, in this case, studying abroad. And you have the other things that are harmful, not helpful. Meaning it still costs quite a lot of money, and even if it's more affordable than it had been some time ago, it is not as simple as it seems to be to many. Yeah, you just go. There's another thing of threat. You are living in a different culture. All what you said in the essays. But where I would like to encourage you or push you a little bit to make it easier for you, get it into a scheme of categories, getting it ordered as different dimensions, and then you can say, okay, I put this here, I put this here. I'm not sure where I can put this here. It has a little bit of a weakness because I'm struggling with the language. But at the same time, it may be actually an opportunity because I'm permanently asked, required, to question things. So I come back actually to this. There had been many countries I traveled to and I didn't know the language. There had been many things I didn't understand simply because they had been so different in their cultural background, in their context. But if you live wherever you live, you take things for granted. You don't think about it. If you come from outside, you may ask yourself, hey, why is this? Why do we do this in this way? Is it really, coming from your background, is it really the best ground or best way? Or can we go and look for another way of doing things? In this way, try to look out for instruments. These are purely instruments. SWOT, others. Look at the general scheme as I outlined and try to order things in terms of gaining a better understanding. I'll stop here now. To Santa stories, there are the famous two, and the second will come with naughty things on referencing and other stuff. Thank you.